Hello and welcome to this HR panel about fostering belonging in remote work. Today we will dive into the strategies for enhancing employee well-being and engagement. But before we start, a few words about OpenUp. Here at OpenUp we envision a world where well-being is an important or top priority for everybody and therefore of course also in the workplace. We hope that also with this session we inspire you to really take action and also make it a priority in your life. And therefore, we really want to engage you to use the full potential of this session, to interact with each other in the chat, to also use the question tab that you find below. In the end, we will have a Q&A. So please put your questions there. And you may also find like some reaction buttons below where you can always interact when you find something super inspiring or you really find something like valuable. Please use it. Please interact with us. And my name is Annemarie André. I'm a content specialist at OpenUp. But luckily I'm not alone here in this nice studio. I'm here with Katja. She is the VP of Human Resources at ASICS for the EMEA region. Then we have next to her Zouhair Ouriaghli, Employee Experience Lead at Microsoft. And then last but not least, Michiel, CEO and co-founder at Workwize. Welcome. Nice that you joined us here today. And I would say, I will stop talking in a moment because it's all about you and your experiences, of course. So let's dive right into it. We actually prepared a poll for you users out there. And I would say let's start with something that defines really every employee journey already from the beginning. And the question is your onboarding process optimized for remote workers? Yes or no? And while you vote or while we get the results in, it's actually already a good first question that I want to ask to you, Michiel. What strategies and tools are there out there to help remote hires feel integrated already in the beginning?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And I think, first of all, it's good to realize that an onboarding process for a new joiner can be quite a stressful period, right? And it was already like that when people were still working only in the office. First week you don't know anyone yet. You usually don't have your tools yet. You don't have a working laptop always on day one. So it can be very stressful. And I think working remotely or hybrid makes it even tougher for a new joiner. So I think it's really important indeed as a company to do that well. And to make sure that the first weeks really feel like a good experience for your employee. In the end, that will increase retention a lot, and it will also improve productivity already from early on that someone starts. And some things where you can think about is really making sure that, especially in the first week, everything is pre-planned for a new joiner. So somebody should have like a printed out agenda, basically stating day to day, hour to hour, what he or she will do. Because otherwise it might feel like very unnatural for a person where you don't know what to do during that first week. I think a second thing that we like a lot within Workwize is to have like a company Wikipedia, where you can basically find everything that you need, from how a company Friday afternoon drinks work until like how do you do an expense. Everything should be findable from there, and that really I think should comfort the new joiner in how to navigate within the company. And I think the last thing is really making sure that you have the right tools to onboard a person, right? For example, making sure that from day one you have a working laptop, you have all the equipment that you need. For example, a company like Workwize can support with that, but you also have other companies that can make sure that from day one you have a welcome package and you have all the equipment to be successful in your new company.
Mm-hmm. Super important. And I saw before the poll started off with 70% said, I have that. And now it's kind of changed to 50-50, which is quite interesting. So I think there's still some companies, who don't really onboard remote workers like this yet. Zouhair, how do you solve this within Microsoft?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Thank you for that. So as you stated before, onboarding is, of course, an interesting process. It's quite important to get the first impression with the organization. If you don't have a good onboarding experience, then people might leave within the first 6 months or within a year, because you need to get them engaged as soon as possible. So especially when we move into hybrid and remote, this digital fabric becomes much more important, because connections is what makes work fun. Mm-hmm. So from that angle, what we really looked into is how we can facilitate this digital community building. So create these communities around digital aspects within your team, so get that buddy, but as well outside of your team. And as well have the engagement with leaders within the organization as soon as possible to really understand what's happening, and so you can feel engaged and connected with the mission of the organization. Secondly, the Wikipedia is something as well that we have in place, and especially to find certain topics, but as well find certain experts to connect with them directly via chat, and to actually find what you're looking for, especially if you're just new. You want to contact a senior employee, but this person might, of course, not be there. So how are you going to go get along specifically around the topic? And moving actually into this whole generative AI wave that we're seeing right now, it's actually becoming even easier. So we're seeing onboarding use cases where you can just send out a chat like, hey, I need this, or get nudges, and it will be fed actually to you. So that's the next thing that's actually upcoming quite soon, which will make this onboarding experience even easier for you.
Super nice. Yeah, because indeed it's about the practical things, right? But I liked how you said like digital community, actually. It's about this community building that, yeah, sometimes you may miss because you're not around or not in the office, but yeah, you still need this connection to the people, actually. Also for your mental well-being. And well, that's actually already like pointing out to Katja, yeah. That's actually what you're occupying yourself with at ASICS also, right? To make this connection, the awareness for the mental well-being and the remote workers. Yeah. How do you bring that to attention, especially for people working remote?
Yeah, it's a difficult question indeed, but we have changed somewhat our onboarding program, obviously during COVID, where everything was digital, but we really take some time to explain mental well-being and well-being in general at ASICS. So ASICS is actually an acronym. It stands for Anima Sana and Corpore Sano, which means sound mind, sound body. So it's really part of our founding philosophy and our purpose as a company. And that already usually comes up in an interview when people are joining or wanting to join ASICS. But then we also elaborate during the onboarding process and give them also the tools that they really need if they are struggling. So OpenUp is one of them, of course. A buddy we also have a system for to make sure that they feel that they can reach out if they're not sure where to find something or who to ask for something. And indeed, the tools, I can't agree more. It's so important to just make sure that that kind of thing is set in the beginning so people aren't sort of distracted by not having a working laptop or that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they're not searching around. Oh,
yeah, exactly.
to solve this.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Can only agree with you. Let's go to the next poll, actually. You talked also about the communication, of course, the buddy system. Where can I find something? Who is there to help me out? Maybe if I need something in the beginning. So that's a huge point. Is of course internal communication. The question to you is, our internal communication processes should be altered to make them suitable for remote teams. Yeah, do you agree or not? That is the question, for all our viewers. And I would say, definitely communication with people working from home. Yeah, there's a whole new set of challenges, I would say. You might not be able to walk around the desk and say, hey, by the way, can you send me this or whatsoever? You have a whole different level of communication. How do you solve that challenge within ASICS?
I think it is sometimes a pitfall with remote working to do a lot either via text or via email. You often see that words can be interpreted differently and there's no real tonality, of course. So we really do advise, especially remote managers, to make sure that they really make the connection, either calling someone old school or video calling, of course, video meetings. And also in that meeting to really take some time to build the relationship. Because I think if you have a bit of a relationship, if you establish some trust, then the communication will flow easier. So to take some time just to ask, how are you doing? How's your day? What are you struggling with? That kind of thing. We often, stress from work and to-do lists, dive into, what are the tasks at hand, but we really try to encourage people to take some time to build that connection remotely, even more than in person, probably.
Yeah, to also show that vulnerability, right, as a leader,
Yeah.
even to show how you're feeling and how the other is feeling. Is there anything from Microsoft, from your experience, that you would like to add?
Yeah, definitely. So with regard to internal communication, what we have seen over the last few years is that we have a much bigger need to communicate, especially with remote employees. But at the same time, this doing more with less strength in internal communication is as well there. So there's this pressure between the two. So how do you work around that? So we approach from two different angles. Of course, you have your direct management layer. The manager is actually communicating with the employees. We use the model coach care philosophy there. So asking the beginning of the meeting, what's top of mind, just to create that connection indeed, as you're saying, to have that connection. And at the same time, in order to facilitate it broader within the organization, we're really looking at targeted communications to certain individuals, to certain people. Instead of sending out this mass communication to everyone, where we saw that engagement actually dropped because not everything is relevant, we focus much more on leadership as an internal communications channel, meaning that you follow specific leaders, and these leaders might be interesting for you for specific reasons, and then these leaders are then sending out communications to their core internal comms team or themselves, so that it becomes relevant for you, and therefore creating that engagement much more, because it's something that you would want to listen to. And you can then offset as well that work a little bit more to leadership and people around them, instead of putting all the work with internal comms teams.
Yeah, I liked what you said. Like, activation drops in the end if you find something is not really relevant for me. So it's like really targeted communication in that sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Michiel, I would also like to hear your opinion on that, because before in the coffee kitchen you said you also have teams from different locations, and you try to come together, right, at certain moments per year.
Yeah, definitely. And I think indeed, communication is even more key in a remote environment. And I also agree a lot with Katja that if you write emails, words can be misinterpreted and it can be tough to communicate. So one of the things that we're focusing on is asynchronous optimal communication. For example, a tool that we're using for that is Loom. So instead of writing an email to somebody or asking somebody, it's actually recording a small Loom video, explaining the presentation or asking the question in there. We find that much more optimal, and that there's much more misinterpretation about what you mean. So I think that's a thing that we're focusing on. I think another thing is indeed the fact also within Workwize, we have different locations and people either working remote or from the office. And a thing that we were noticing in the beginning, and it was quite tough to keep people engaged when part of the team is in the office and part is dialing in. So, for example, we have a weekly checkout with the whole company. We find it important to have these certain moments where you're as a whole company together. But when we do that, we make sure that there's a moderator who actually makes sure that the people at home are engaged as well as the people in the office. And also making sure that we have really good hardware in the office to make sure that the sound is good, for example, and that people who are dialing in are then really engaged. Because if you don't do it that well, you will see that, for example, the people who are physically present, they will have the overhand over the people who are dialing in. So I think there's a lot of things that you can do to improve communication in a hybrid world. Yeah.
Indeed, Loom is also one of my favorite tools. It makes it so much easier, right, to even explain something in a short video. Are there maybe any tools, practical tools that you use?
Not really, to be honest. I'm interested to having a look at that one. We did experience indeed what Michael was saying, that we actually had recently a bigger meeting where half was in person and half wasn't, and that definitely didn't work. I think for a bit of a standard meeting with a short agenda, it could be okay, but we started having discussions. It was with our senior leadership, and the discussions in person could not really be followed remotely. So we also said, actually following that, we either go fully in person or fully remote, but no longer this sort of half, because it doesn't work. But sorry, not really an answer to your question.
No, but it's
no tools for us. What we used, just normal chat and video calls. Yeah.
And then from our side, of course, I do see this whole meeting equality, as we like to call it, which is but then you have these big screens where you actually sometimes have a meeting, we sit in a circle, And then you have a TV screen which shows someone's face on, so it actually feels that the person is as well really in the meeting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it makes it really much nicer from that angle to actually get the person engaged in the room. So it's a different perspective. But from our, if we talk about internal communication, we use Microsoft Viva, which is an employee experience platform where you can have internal communications, learnings, and everything is actually via Teams. So you don't need to go to another platform, but actually use Microsoft Teams in your daily work, and then it comes to you whenever it's needed.
Mm-hmm. Nice. The results from the poll are also in. 85% say that it should be altered for remote teams. Yeah, which is nice, of course. But we see there's sometimes still challenges that we need to solve around it, or you need to find your way there. Okay, should I call? Should I use this platform? This one for which use case should I use what actually? And that influences, of course, also the engagement, I would say. So let's go to the next poll. Are you facing challenges when it comes to boosting engagement of remote working employees? Yes or no? It's an interesting one that yesterday at a German session actually, and was also one question in the Q&A was also that what do I do with low performers maybe remotely, especially that was a quite interesting question that we also talked about. But let's not talk about low performers because that's the other side of it. Let's better talk about boosting remote employee engagement. What are ways on how to boost that actually? Zouhair, I'll give the word to you.
Thank you. So before we dive into that, I would like to, of course, what is engagement, right? Because it's a term that's being used overall, and it's the feeling of being invested in your organization, energized, and trying to have that fun on a daily aspect. And when I talk with leaders, I see a lot that there's a lot of focus on productivity right now, especially in this macroeconomic environment that we're living in. So we at Microsoft really believe that productivity is one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is engagement, and engagement and productivity lead to sustained performance. Because if you only focus on productivity, people get into burnout quite quickly. So people need to have fun as well. So therefore, engagement is very important to us. And so we also have, of course, our employee signals where we can ask questions to people. And the main question that we ask is, how happy are you at Microsoft? So with that question, you can already get a lot of answers. So that fills it a lot. And then looking into engagement, how we actually try to make people happy with their work at Microsoft is to give them very interesting things to do. So you're available for other projects, other teams. So it's very agile in a certain way that you can work on different projects, whatever you like, where you think it's nice to work. Is the first organization I've been in where I see people working for 20 years in tech sector, which is quite rare. And because people are making all these horizontal moves very easily, so you always are learning something new. And that, combined with other factors, really listening to employees and acting upon that, really makes Microsoft a great employer in keeping that energy and keeping yourself happy at Microsoft.
Nice.
Yeah. Katja, how do you do that at ASICS?
I think definitely after COVID, we really wanted to physically get back together. So that was one of the things that we've invested in for the last 2 years, to just have some team meetings in person again, to really, people that you only saw from sort of the neck up, to really have them come together. And indeed, the other thing is something around Teams chat, FIFA engagement we also have. So creating also an atmosphere where there's room for, I would say, a bit of socializing. So, for example, in HR, we have an HR community across Europe. And if someone's got their birthday or a milestones reached, we share things there. It's quite social, so not per se work, sharing pictures, that kind of thing. And actually, that's gotten better after COVID. I think we're more digital now, whereas before it was definitely more, each country for us in Europe was a bit more on their own. And we didn't really connect as, for example, an HR team. So I think that's actually a small advantage of everything that's happened, that we've learned to be more digital and to adapt to sharing more content in that way.
Interesting to see, that indeed that it helped you to come closer together. Although, it was a difficult period.
Yeah.
I also still remember there were colleagues back then. I was like, "Oh, you're so tall! I didn't know that."
Exactly.
It's really a surprise. Yeah. Michiel, how do you do that within Workwize? Keep people happy, engaged, have the fun as well, and
First of all, I very much agree with what you two have been saying. So indeed, there's the side of productivity, but there's also really the important side of engagement, and if without engagement, in the end, productivity will also fall. So fully agree with that. And one of the things how we cope with that is indeed also the physical meeting, right? So it's very important for people to come together, create a good atmosphere. So for example, within Workwize, 2 times a year, the whole company comes together wherever you work. So for example, if you're working in the French hub, we still try to get everyone into one place. During the year, we try to have local hubs coming together as well. Even when they're working remote, we try to get people still together and to get budgets for that. And for example, there's also other things where you can create engagement in a remote world. So some of the things that we're doing, for example, is creating relevant Slack channels. Things like, what did you do this weekend? They work so well because even within Workwize, we're now with approximately 55 people, and the amount of amazing stories that you will see each Monday morning, like amazing photos from people visiting mountains in Italy to lakes in Romania, and that's just get so much engagement from everyone. And well, we have many channels like that, and that works a lot as well. Just not talking about work, not talking about productivity, but really about human beings and being happy personally and also in your job.
I think the channel with the most engagement within the OpenUp, I hope that's fine if I hear, is the Furry Friends channel. It's basically a channel where people share their pet pictures or other people's pets. It's a very lovely channel. I like it. My favorite. And of course then, the other level I would say is also team spirit, right? Because, you can maybe engage one-on-one or have this connection. But personally, I also find it always a bit tricky, how to keep this team spirit alive within people that work mostly remotely or hybrid. Are there any tricks that you do within Microsoft maybe that help to keep the team together actually as a whole, to feel the community there?
Definitely. So maybe as a team, so if you go one layer down, of course, looking at your own team, especially during COVID, what we're trying to do is having these walking sessions. Maybe everyone knows these, walking in the forest to still keep that connection. And as well having these teams meet on a Friday afternoon, brown fruit sessions we would call them, but it's actually bitterballen. Where you can learn something from each other, have your food, have a drink, and talk with each other. And after COVID, what we're seeing is still having this once per 3 weeks. We come together as a team to have like a team meeting to discuss, and at the same time, we're engaged on so much different levels with the team. So we have a coffee corner in the office where you would like to go and connect with each other. Or if you do remotely, then still I call someone up just to have a conversation. Nothing work-wise, but then specifically focusing on just a chat and just conversing, which is also part of my daily job. And then during the conversation, I'm like, hey, that's interesting. What are you doing? And based on that, you still are connected with different people within the organization.
Nice.
Katja, let's say, you recognize already like signs of struggle in an employee or signs of distress maybe. What are the action points? What do you do then in this case actually?
Yes, we recognise at ASICS also the struggles that there is in the world. Let's say burnout rates are, I think you mentioned, already higher than ever before. So it's definitely something that we are looking into. This year and last year already, we had all of our managers go through mental health literacy course. It's a training from an external provider we engaged, because I do think indeed that it's the managers who would see the first signals. HR, we can't be everywhere, but also sometimes with remote working, I'd easily not see a colleague for maybe a month if I don't have meetings with them. So we really depend on our managers to pick up those first signals. And we're really trying to create a community or a company culture where it's okay to talk about these things. I think the world has changed. Indeed, working in the evenings, maybe, is it good or is it bad? But there's no compartmentalizing life anymore. It's a bit blurry. I really love the flexibility. I often go home at 4 to beat traffic, have dinner with my family, and then work in the evening. But you need to be careful that that's not then seen as a signal that you need to stay and you need to work and you need to be doing stuff in the evening. So I really love the flexibility, but it can be dangerous. So we're really trying to educate our managers in picking up the signals. And if they do see someone that is distressed or struggling to have open conversations, to refer them to platforms like OpenUp. So that's definitely one that's used in our company and we got good reviews of. And if needed, other more professional help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good point. Also to kind of train leaders actually in seeing that and recognizing that, so they can actually even feel like, okay, I can make a change there, or I can do something.
Yeah.
So I can imagine often there is this kind of helplessness around it, but yeah, it's private maybe. How can I address this? Yeah, super interesting that you actually sent them to a training to kind of figure that out. Right?
It's difficult stuff, right? It's not always easy for people to talk about or to start that conversation. So
indeed. Yeah, I already see 90% said they feel the leaders are equipped to know about those challenges. So that's super, super nice, of course, to see. I would say actually it's also time for a Q&A soon. So if you haven't done it yet, please post your questions also in the chat. Not in the chat, of course, in the question tab. That would be ideal because then you can also upvote it. And then we see which questions are maybe more relevant for everybody. That would be great. That is... That's actually it. And while we wait for the Q&A, let's summarize a bit actually our conclusions. I would say we started off already talking about onboarding, so that's where the employee journey starts, of course, and then towards internal communication, keeping the engagement high, and I learned a lot about the tools actually that you can use to still engage with remote and hybrid workers. Super valuable input, I think. I would personally also be interested in, because we always talk about remote working, hybrid working, then office, going back to the office, and now you see a lot of push, right? We have to go maybe back to the office. What are your thoughts about that? Open question to
I think at least my thought on it through my job and through Workwize, I speak to a lot of companies that work on the whole spectrum. So some of the companies almost work only at the office. Most companies have a form of hybrid working, and again, some companies have a full remote policy. And I think the only real answer is it depends on the company. What I do see is that some companies that work only remote, often you have that they've started off as a company like that. Mm-hmm. So they actually hire people that thrive in an environment that only works remote. And for example, you see that in some developer companies where people say in surveys and to their managers that that's the way they love to work. And then from the start, they can build sort of the tools and the processes around making that succeed. I think the big pool of companies, you see that most people like the form of flexibility, what you mentioned before, Katja, but at the same time, they want to have the connection and also the physical connection of sometimes meeting your colleagues, having a drink together. Mm-hmm. So most companies have a successful hybrid model whereby you, for example, say to your team, like, hey, let's meet up on a Friday. There's no traffic or less traffic on Friday, or you have a team with a lot of parents, and then it might be a different day that works better. So I think it really depends on who, what is the category and how old are people, what are their preferences, and if you know your people well, then probably you can come up with either a hybrid or a remote or a full in-office policy that works best for your company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so to really understand the DNA of the company.
Exactly.
First,
yeah, it's very important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and to add on that, I agree on the fact that there's three different layers, and most of them are in this hybrid policy. And back to your question on regards to this pushback to the office, I think that comes from the symptoms that are coming out of this hybrid model that we're finding ourselves in, like this burnout risk that we have been talking about, or how to onboard people. So these are all questions that are coming back right now, and we're solving for these problems as we speak. So organizations are looking into these problems. How can we do this in a hybrid model? And instead of getting the signal of like, hey, I want to get back to the office because that's easier. I don't think employees are going to take that, because we all like our flexibility. I don't think that's going to work that easy, because employees are just going to move to another organization, I believe. So it becomes very important to solve for these issues that we're facing right now. This burnout risk, working after hours, compartmentalizing your work, creating a good onboarding experience, and a great employee journey. So all of these things are right now where we find ourselves in to make the hybrid model work properly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I totally agree indeed. We've got a 50-50 model at ASICS where you can choose to work at home up until 50%. But we've specifically stated that in that way to not say, you need to be in 3 days, but if you're a week where you're actually much more focused work or something that you're fully at home, that's fine. And then maybe the week after you're more in the office. So we've really tried to put it in the teams, in the manager's hands a bit more. But I do agree it's a risk because, and we also have some managers who are still used to more being in the office a lot. So then if people leave at 4, like myself sometimes, it'd be like, oh, you're already going home. So that's also sometimes the different look at how this all works and comes together. And we talk also a lot about looking at the output instead of necessarily the input or the hours in an office, but that's also still challenging. Like, how do you measure then output in a good way? It's not always visible. So
Totally. Yeah, so we got some questions in. So I would like to start with the question of Victor. Are your people aware of the mental energy it takes of working mostly solely remote? Is connecting with colleagues in person not rewarding energy as well? Question maybe for you, Michiel, already.
Yes. So do I understand the question correctly? So if people know the energy it can take to work remotely, or what was the question?
Yeah. The question is like, or Victor says, it also costs maybe a lot of mental energy to solely work remotely. Yeah. And he basically asks if it's not rewarding, like if it's not giving you energy as well to see each other in person.
Yeah, so I totally agree. I think it can also give you energy to see people. At the same time, you can also make an argument for going to your work. Like a lot of people have to sit in very busy trains or have to drive into traffic. And if we all look back at the world in 2019, where most people were still working in the office, it could also be quite draining to go to the office each day, and it could take quite some time. So I think, generally speaking, having that flexibility and going to the office when you sort of feel like you need the energy of other people and maybe having like a great creative session together, then you should have, in my opinion, the flexibility to go to the office. And sometimes when you want to do some focus work and you don't want to spend 2 hours in traffic that day, it might actually give you more energy to stay at home, be with your family, maybe close off a bit earlier, get your kids from school. And having that flexibility can probably also give you a lot of energy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, see, so like really also look at the day-to-day life and what is maybe more energy giving than taking. Yeah, Mark has also an interesting question that he posted. In my experience, generations look different too and expect different things of working remotely. Is this something you experience as well, and how do you deal with that? he asks. Zouhair, maybe...
Could you repeat that one,
Yeah,
please?
the question of generations, actually, that there are different generations look differently at the topic of working remotely. Do you experience that as well in your companies?
So it's a great question you asked that, because when it comes to working remotely versus working in the office or hybrid, it's all about connection, right? That's what we're talking about, having that connection, having that energy. And we did a research, the Work Trend Index, which we release every year. You can find it online. And we did actually research around the need for connection with others across different generations. So we actually measured it over time across different generations. And what we saw is that the need for connection is actually higher with younger generations than with older generations, because they are already set. They know, they have their network, they know what to do, etc. But still, overall, you didn't see that much of a change. So it was not a significant change. But younger generations would like to go more into the office because they still are figuring out where they fit in a work life. But overall, the amount of people that wanted that connection is the same. But again, you can also make a very clear argument on that need for connection versus having the other needs within your personal life that are much more relevant to you than having the need for connection with others within your work life. So both arguments can be made.
Yeah, and at ASICS, do you experience that a bit, this generational struggle, maybe the conflict between generations?
Yes, sometimes, or just more personal values or personal perception. We definitely have some people who are thinking, on Friday afternoon, probably no one's working at home. And some people who are very dedicated and fully believe. I think we've proven, probably all companies, but also ASICS, that we can definitely do a good job at home. We were successful in the 2 years during COVID when we were fully at home. So sometimes we do need to remind people of that, indeed. And I think that the flexibility is really key to retaining talent for us. As you said, I think if we would force people back into more time in the office or, starting at 9 and ending at 5, that we would lose a lot of talent. So that's what we try to educate some people on who would see that differently. But when you asked the question in the beginning, I must say, if I think of my father, for example, he's retired, he's a very old generation, but he still thinks I'm drinking coffee when I'm working at home. So I understand also that the generational aspects and what is normal for him, for example, when he always worked is very different now. So, yeah.
Yeah, totally. Also, of course, different, how were you raised, with which perceptions of work, and it was still often like going to the office every day, or like the one who leaves the office the latest, right, is the winner, kind of this thing. Yeah, totally. I would say, let's have one last question from Roel. How do you ensure that the company values are clear when you onboard someone remotely? Interesting question. Please, I will give it to you.
Interesting one. So, of course, having an onboarding week, or actually a week where you go to, in our case, to the USA and learn about what Microsoft is important to get that whole vision from a global perspective. But then again, within a team perspective, within a local perspective, we as well are looking into what are the local goals, etc. And coming back on your point previously, how do you get measured output? So that's as well, we really focus on output as well, and within Microsoft, and capture that as well within our systems. So we make something use of Viva Goals, which is part of it, where you actually capture the goal tracking, what people are doing, and you can even click up to the highest level and relay that back to what you're doing, what your KPIs are, what your goals are. So then you have, you can make that link between my individual contributions together what that leads up all the way up to leadership. So then it becomes much more relevant with what I'm doing. It doesn't make, it's not like something that I'm doing randomly, but I know that I'm making a certain contribution. So that's how we do that in a hybrid world. Of course, it's from a tech perspective, but it's very important to communicate it as well from a leadership perspective, and to keep that leadership communication internally, to sending out that mission from our leaders into the organization. So those aspects combined, you make a mix of really getting people engaged and invested into the company mission.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's some nice last words to end our HR panel. Yeah, first of all, thank you, Katja, Zouhair, Michiel, for joining us today and for sharing your experience with us all. And of course, yeah, thank you, the viewers at home that watched and interacted with us and joined the session. If you have a question, of course, we're always very happy if you reach out to us via openup.com. And of course, leave us some feedback about how you liked the session. Yeah, maybe if you liked it, join next time again. That would be great. Have a nice evening.